Okay, I am Chris Reed, the Deputy Editor of the Union-Tribune Editorial Board. We're joined by Sabrina Bazzo, a school board member with San Diego Unified, to ask about her running for re-election. On to you, Laura.
I'm Laura Castaneda, the other Deputy Editor on the board.
Hi, I'm Tanya Navarro. I'm the Community Opinion Editor.
All right, we can start with the stuff that's been in the news quite a bit the last 2 months. You have said a priority is doing a much better job of responding to sexual harassment and discrimination reports. You talked about that federal report that covered the 4 years you took office that said the district did not handle a single complaint out of more than 240 that whole time. Doesn't that finding suggest that this is just like a profound district-wide problem with the entire culture as opposed to a few rogue elements?
Yeah, thank you for allowing me this time this morning. I think, as you mentioned, one of the most important things our district is facing is making sure that our student and our staff are safe, and particularly having our stronger Title IX policies, which address the sexual harassment and gender-based discrimination, as you mentioned. And also referring to the report from 2017 to 22, this was before I joined the board, but it does reveal a lot of serious gaps in how the district handled these cases. And yeah, there are concerns. But to bring the district into compliance since the time I've been on the board, since January 2021, we've actually, starting in 2023, I believe we brought on, even before some of these complaints came out, with the Title IX, the most recent complaints, Title IX attorneys. We've been implementing stricter oversight to ensure better accountability and transparency. And we're also working a lot closer with our district staff. We want to make sure all of our employees are properly trained. I personally am looking into, where are the gaps? Are there specific areas where there's issues? Is this more, widespread that there's been concerns? And not only that they're trained, but also that they're actually know, it's easy to go through a training online and, say that, check that box. But I want to make sure that we're continuing to focus on accountability and transparency and trust within our community. And so I think also another thing that we're going to be doing with our, we just met with our legal or an attorney, is to make sure that at our closed session meetings that we are getting reports, finding out what has been reported and what is that being followed up on.
But that doesn't really answer the question. The question I asked, if you have over 200 different reports of these kinds of terrible things going on or allegedly going on, and not a single one was responded to correctly, it's hard to say this is a process problem. It feels like it's a good faith problem. It feels like there's people inside the district who fully know what Title IX means. It's an old law, and yet didn't comply. And so what about the idea that there should be a house cleaning of the top officials who knew about this, but didn't act to improve things?
Well, I think what I just addressed is actually looking at it and did answer the question. Prior to 2020, I was not on the board, so I can't speak to specifically what those cases were. As I mentioned, I'm looking at what we are doing now, what we're doing since the time I've been on the board to bring our district into compliance. And yes, we are going to make sure that everyone is accountable. No misconduct will be tolerated at any level of leadership. If we are finding, looking back at any of these cases, that there were, then that's not going to be tolerated. And we are doing that by the measures that I shared with you in terms of hiring more attorneys, having that stricter oversight, making sure that we're looking at those cases and, getting that information is getting to us, rather than, if in some cases, if it wasn't being addressed, why that was and what we're going to be doing differently.
Okay, I will ask one last question to try to get to the point that I do not honestly feel has been answered. You talked about hiring more attorneys. You talked about having more training. Mm-hmm. These laws are established and understood in school districts across California. How can you trust any staff member who served from 2017 to 2020 to give you accurate information?
I guess I'm not really clear on what you mean by that.
Hundreds
so
of people are obviously involved in the failure to report these incidents. It's not 2 people, it's hundreds of people. If there's 200 incidents in which paperwork was filed, that means hundreds of people knew about this problem and that there were hundreds of incidents. So to depict this as a process problem or a problem that can be solved by adding resources or by changing focuses does not address the basic fact that unlike other school districts, San Diego responded to 0 complaints. So how can you trust anybody who tolerated this status quo for years?
I think I've shared that with you already. I've shared what we're going to be doing if there was misconduct in place. Also, looking back at those cases, we have to have our legal look at all of the cases to make sure that there's actual evidence, that there's proof of evidence of the actual misconduct being handled or happening. Because in some of the cases, we know that we don't really have proof of evidence. There might have been something brought forward. It's been looked at. They didn't have enough evidence to bring something to forward from that. And as I said, we are moving forward. We're trying to do all we can to make sure we cover, make sure that if there's any gaps in the system, that we are working on those. I don't agree that every person that's been in the district between 2017 and 2020 should be penalized. We're looking at our entire system, and if there's any places where there is misconduct, we will make sure that that's not tolerated.
Sabrina, allegations about Lamont Jackson were also kept from this board until spring. After they became known, Jackson was forced out in a process that was very quick by government standards. Do you agree with the way that it was handled? What could have or should have been done differently in your opinion? And I also have to ask you if you feel like the district has had or has now any kind of a secret culture.
Yeah. I would say with regard to the process of terminating Dr. Jackson, I guess I want to go back a little bit further than that and also share the way that he was hired as well. He was hired through a superintendent search. We had a representatives from across, the city and the county, leaders from every level, a lot of nonprofit organizations. My opponent actually was on that superintendent search team as well. And from that, they selected, there were about, I believe, 4 or 5 candidates that came forward to speak with us. And Dr. Jackson, at that time, this was now 2022, was the strongest candidate of that pool. So now moving forward, when the allegations were made, the way that the legal process needed to work is that we brought in an outside external legal team to look into these allegations. And it takes some time. We want to make sure that that's a completely comprehensive process, that they're not missing anything. They're interviewing everyone that they need to. As mentioned, anyone who's had concerns. And so it did take, I think it was 3 to 4 months to continue that processing, because we wanted to make sure that we were being as comprehensive as possible with how we were handling the situation. So once we've found out the allegations, I did not speak to any of my colleagues prior to us having that closed session. And I already had decided that I was planning on terminating. And, my colleagues had decided independently as well. And I think we did the process in the right way, because we needed to make sure that we took time to make sure all those steps were done. And, we had a comprehensive kind of case to make that decision.
You didn't answer the secretive culture question.
Oh, I don't know if I would say secretive or I think every superintendent hires people that they feel comfortable with. They have that team around them. I'm not privy to if people didn't know within that, some of his people that he worked with. I did not get a sense of that, to be honest. I worked with Dr. Jackson for, a few years, and I did not ever get a sense of kind of that secretive kind of culture, just that he wanted to have that team around him that he was comfortable with in terms of, people that he could feel good in terms of working with.
And just to be clear, in the process in which he was hired, did you have information or ever speak to people that he worked with before in other districts or in his circles, professional circles closely, where those folks reached out to?
Yes, so Dr. Jackson's always just worked at San Diego Unified. He really hasn't worked anywhere else. And so, yeah, there were references that were contacted in terms of going through that process for all of our candidates, not just for Dr. Jackson.
But I'm saying those were references that they provided, not outside checking that you all did.
I mean, yeah, we do the same process for every candidate that comes into the district. We didn't make a point of doing additional outside information for one candidate over another. If we had done that, we would have, the way our interview process works, we have to do that for all of our candidates. So we go through a proper or a process that's consistent for all of our candidates.
I understand that, but
Mhm.
I'm saying in those finalists that you all interviewed, there was no checking other people that these folks have worked with other than the references they provided. That was my question.
I believe that is correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry. I
Yes,
needed
I'm
to-
sorry. I have the next question, and if you could keep your answer brief, because we do have a number of other questions to get to.
Sure.
The COVID-19 response, do you feel that everything was handled appropriately to the best that it could have been, or were there things that should have been handled differently?
Yes, so with regard to I came in right during the COVID shutdown. I was actually, when I first came in and was online, I basically, was either at home on Zoom or in an office by myself. And it was definitely, a difficult time, but I do feel like we worked closely with our public health leaders. I actually am have my master's in public health from San Diego State. And with that knowledge and expertise in working with our local experts, as well as those from across the state, we worked with UCSD, we worked with the county, all kind of levels of leadership to make sure that we were making the best choices for our students. And I believe that it was not, like I said, it wasn't an easy time. It was a difficult time, but I think moving through that process, we were able to get our students back to school in a safe manner.
And do you feel that lost learning because of the pandemic has been, are we back where we should be, the children, as far as lost learning, or is there still something more that needs to be done?
Yeah, no, I think we are getting back to that level. In recent discussions with some of our staff members, I know that our graduation rates are back to our pre-COVID levels. Right now, San Diego Unified is scoring it's among our large urban school districts. San Diego Unified actually had the highest performance in graduation rates in college and career preparedness, and that includes looking at LA, Fresno, Long Beach, and San Francisco Unified, as well as Oakland. So we, overall, we are maintaining, and we are now starting to make gains. Our recent math scores actually increased by 6 points, which outpaced the state average. Our English language scores increased by about 1.9 points, also outperforming the statewide average. And our graduation rates maintain about almost 90%, which exceeds the state average as well. A few examples: Mira Mesa, has had over 90% graduation rate, which is in my district, in District A. And Scripps Ranch High School, which is also within District A, is ranked as one of the top, ranked as the 6th top performing high school in the county. We have over 42 school districts in our county.
Thank you.
I guess in that same regard, how do you feel the district is doing on academics after an era in which its leaders like Cindy Martin depict as a national leader?
hmm Yeah, I think we're, we are. There's a lot of areas that we are performing well in. Do we need to do better? Absolutely. One of the things that we're doing, because not only just looking at test grades, but really looking at the whole child, and that's something from having my public health background that I'm able to do, is looking at how our students are doing from a mental wellness standpoint as well. Because if we don't have our students feeling, good at school, then they're not going to perform well, in any areas of their life. So, we focus on that as well. But as far as our, how we're doing in terms of our raising academic achievement, that prioritizes both our instructional quality and our student well-being. We definitely need to emphasize our student-focused outcomes. We're currently working with a group called the Council of Great City Schools it's a nonprofit urban school organization that works with all the large urban schools. And we put together a program. It's called Student Outcome Focused Governance. And it's kind of a framework to really allow us to dig down deep and get more data around our specific schools and really have like measurable SMART goals that we can look at over time, rather than just saying, oh, we want to increase our literacy and math scores, but really looking at how we're doing and how we can continue both looking at them, along the way, at the end, being able to change and move any of those goal posts if we need to, and also working closely with our site plan for student achievement at each school, so we can really push for a deeper analysis and use evidence-based practices to support all of our students.
Thank you. And I'm sure you're familiar to what's happening in San Francisco. Do you think the district in San Diego is ready for a coming era in which enrollment dwindle, forcing the closure of at least some school? This has been hugely divisive in schools districts in Northern California.
Yeah, and enrollment decreases. We're tracking that very closely. We have seen that San Diego has kind of stabilized. It was going down, a bit more, and has kind of stabilized in that area. We are not going down as much as San Francisco and some of our other large urbans. Some of the things that we're doing to kind of help with that. One of them is the Universal Transitional Kindergarten Program. And by having that in place in our neighborhoods, we are bringing in more of our parents within those neighborhoods and starting them at the preschool level, because a lot of our students don't always have access to quality preschool education unless their parents are paying for that. So it allows us to have a little bit more of a even keel for all of our students to be have that opportunity when they're starting kindergarten. It also allows for us to be reaching out earlier to get our neighborhood, our communities going to that particular neighborhood school, and also getting the parents. We're having a very high retention rate. Once they start that UTK program, the younger students, their younger siblings are also coming in from that. So we're seeing that as helping us increasing our numbers as well.
But as a specific follow-up on that, in Oakland, for example, when there was a proposal to shut down 2 elementary schools that were a half mile away, both parents of both sides bitterly fought it, to the point where the school board, felt like they were being asked to make almost like a racial choice. So we wrote an editorial about 10 years ago that talked about how when the Pentagon began to downsize in the 1990s, it had the base realignment closing commission that came up with impartial theories about what schools should close. Mm-hmm. It really feels like this is going to be such a hugely emotional issue that maybe it's unrealistic to expect that the process could be that way. But I do know that some school districts are setting it up, are dealing with it like we have to make objective decisions as opposed to the passions of the moment. How do you think, how big a challenge is that going to be to try to weed out, how parents feel about this with the district's need to downsize?
Yeah, I mean, at any time, I've never actually, unfortunately, had experience having to close a school, and I am sure it would be extremely emotional for any and all parents. We're not at that point yet, and we are keeping a close track on our enrollment and trying to do everything we can to focus on getting our students back to school. Another area that we focused on is chronic absenteeism. We're doing a lot with the county, trying to make sure that our students feel engaged, addressing again our mental health concerns. We've been opening up wellness areas at many of our middle schools and high schools. We're actually even having staff from the high schools, like trusted staff, like coaches, that are going out and talking to students and families and finding out, hey, why is the student not coming to school? How can we actually address that? And from that, we've actually seen a 9.5 percentage point decline in the chronic absence rate. So all of those things to say that we are trying to focus right now and maintaining our schools enrollment as much as possible. And we may get to that point, and I think we'll have to look at some hard data, if it comes to that. If we do have to look at closing a school, I mean, there's going to be a lot of factors involved in that. And I know we're watching that closely. Fortunately, we're not at that point yet. I would also share some of our school grounds, not necessarily closed schools, but where we're school property that we have, where the district is currently located and is going to be moving to the old Jack in the Box headquarters in Kearney Mesa area, I believe. We're going to be using some of those lands to actually build affordable staff housing for both teachers and classified staff. And so if and when we ever have situations where we have to close a school, which again, we're not on that page yet, there are some bright spots in terms of trying to make sure that we're actually supporting our staff members by also addressing the affordable housing issue.
San Diego County was kind of ground zero in California when it comes to parents criticizing decisions by school boards. We had the San Marcos School Board in the 1990s that was taken over by people who objected to the board. But it really feels like San Diego Unified has kind of avoided the contretemps over things like book banning and gender issues and other social issues that have roiled some schools in East County and North County. Is that just because you have a parental who are just different? Or did the district do something to kind of proactively address these concerns about book banning and about other social issues that seem to roil up and spend a lot of time of a lot of other school districts?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think San Diego Unified just really, we want to prioritize our students and their safety and make sure that they feel like they're at a safe place when they're at school. And I believe in strong family engagement, but forcing, schools to notify parents about things like putting our vulnerable students at risk, particularly if they don't have a supportive home environment. We're not in favor of that. And I think around book banning, my thought, I can only speak for myself, is I don't believe we should ban books. I think we should be talking about these issues and addressing these issues and, making sure that the literature is age appropriate, of course, but having those difficult conversations. What is it that is a concern? Really kind of trying to dig deeper and find out where there's issues around different things, because a lot of times, take, for example, our ethnic studies program, when parents have had concerns and they've actually come in and been able to see what the program is about, they've been much more comfortable with it.
Thank you.
Are there any issues that we haven't touched that you would like to draw our attention to?
Yeah, I think I would like to talk a little bit more. I touched on it, but the student outcomes focused governance, the reason that we are going in that direction is as a board and as the school district as well. We believe that we do need to have more specific data-driven goals. And the student outcome focused governance framework is not only something that the board has passed, but it's something that we're at every level. For example, the local control accountability plan has been tied into those goals. We're going out. I just spoke with our area superintendent yesterday for District A, and they're going out to all the schools and they're tying in those goals and measurable areas that we're assessing, and and having each of the elementary schools, for example, have a focus area and a plan to come up with specifically how they're going to address those issues, and going back out doing walkthroughs. And I'm going to be doing those with them to really see where we're at, and not only just make it like the site plan for student achievement that we have at every school, where we have certain goals, not just having that be a piece of paper or a document, but really having it being like a living document where we are, looking back, seeing where we're doing, where we're doing well, where can we do better. And it's exciting work, because I think we're going to be able to have a much better idea of where we're performing well, where we need to work specifically, and how we do that.
Thanks very much for your time. Well, we will wrap up by asking you, what is your 90-second pitch that you give to a voter if you're trapped in an elevator with them? What's the reason you think that you've earned a second term?
So yeah, as a parent, I've been an active volunteer at all levels of our schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. And even after my daughters graduated, I continued to stay involved, both as a community representative at the Mira Mesa High School and also as a board member at Mira Mesa Town Council. I was recognized as a volunteer of the year by our entire area a few years back. I've developed a lot of strong relationships, not only with our schools, but our larger community. And as a current board member for the past 4 years, I understand the complexities that we've had in terms of managing a large and diverse district, working with colleagues here, not only here, but at the state and national level in different urban school settings. And I've been working alongside parents, teachers, administrators to really help to increase that transparency, as well as our data-driven student outcome goals, and overseeing some critical budget decisions as well. And also as a health educator, I believe that I am in a very good place in terms of emphasizing the whole child approach to making sure that our students are enjoying school, coming to school, and that it's somewhere that they want to be. And because of that, student engagement that will help with our achievement. And I'm driven by the belief that public education is really the foundation for all of our society, and I will continue to work tirelessly to make sure that our schools provide safe, supportive, and enriching environments for our students.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.